basically our conversations will be based around tech. And I feel like the tech scene has mostly been misunderstood. That's a personal feeling. And so I'd like us to begin with putting a few things into perspective. I believe that tech is a tool, and once it is isolated and placed on its own without plugging it into another sector or another function, it mostly ends up sounding almost like how network marketing mostly feels. If you're doing network marketing for a bad product, it ends up being a Ponzi scam. So I think that's where I want to start from. I don't know what's your perspective on it.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really good point, Goweki, for an intro on what technology is. And I think I fully agree on the power of technology has and its potential. And I guess just wanted to add as well, you do need to invest time in technology. Yes, the boot camps make sense, but that's the first drop of getting into technology. You still need to invest the years and years. We have people who can do a degree for years, a master's and a PhD, still in the technology space. So think like a data science, computer science. So yeah, the depth of technology is just beyond ability to make an app using like a no-code solution in a day, or a hackathon where you sprint through in 72 hours and you have a solution. I think technology is deeper than that. And so I agree. The weight that and impact that technology has in a society is so massive that we live, unfortunately, in a corrupt system in society where people will always look for avenues to exploit. So if you walk into a room and notice everyone is talking about technology, then there's always that one guy who'd be like, how can I scam everyone in this room then? And I guess that's kind of where this
Ruja.
yeah these guys
One
for
coin.
one coin are coming in because the buzz is there, people are excited. It's a complex topic, and majority of people have not invested in understanding, so they're excited but don't have the knowledge. So that's prime scam. That's your prime target as a scammer. That's a perfect target for you.
You've mentioned no-code solutions. I need to hear your thoughts on no-code solutions, because I think you go first, because I'll be a bit harsh. Because and not to say that I don't see the importance of no-code, but the glorification of no-code solutions, I think, gets me. So what do you think about no-code solutions?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think, and you find most people who spent a lot of time working with the code itself and implementing solutions from the ground do tend to have a friction to no code, because you're used to having full control on what you're working with.
Yes.
Because now you find no code, you're using, I think development works in several layers. We have the OGs for making the languages. So the guy building Python, etc., and they build the hammer. Now you take the hammer, you use your the hammer, which is now Python, with your skills and the libraries, you build your house. So now you're finding no code is coming even at an even higher level,
more abstraction.
More abstractions. Yes, now they're giving you a house already. It does have its advantages as like an entry point to technology, because you're abstracted away from the nuances of how the code works. It helps you understand what a button is, how can it interact with different pages, etc. And I see it more as for children, where they can kind of get started.
Even harsher
than you planning to.
Even harsher.
I'm saying that's like a perfect use case for no code. Okay. The second one is, as we've just talked about, is technology is really deep. If I am a doctor, I don't want to hire an entire dev team, but I have an idea that I want to launch. No code would be perfect for me, because It's removed the need to spend years learning a language. If I want an app, it can help me understand I need these pages. If I have the vision, then translating it into a viable product is feasible. So I guess those are the places where I see no code working. But yeah, as I've mentioned, if you're used to coding, I don't think it's there yet.
I'll give the example of WordPress. WordPress has both sides. Has working templates, and you can actually go into WordPress, take everything apart, and start from customizing it at a really low level. So it is a populist statement to start glorifying no-code solutions while they work together. The developer or the software engineer creates these no-code solutions, abstracts it for certain purposes. That's why when you get these WordPress templates, you find that they are customized to a certain scenario. E-commerce, they're customized to blogs, they're customized for all these deployment scenarios. But we need actual people who will go down, get all these nuances and put them all together for this. And well, I like to pull the leg of other developers and software engineers.
PHP developers.
Yes, PHP and all that. At the back of it all, I understand, well, out of the banter and all that, they serve purposes.
Yeah.
But for PHP, I'll always bash PHP.
Yeah, we'll always.
PHP, that
That's
one.
the kid at the corner we just enjoy hitting over and over
Yes,
again.
I think they can't get out of that, and we will keep doing that. Yeah. So I think I brought up PHP. There is a PHP framework.
Laravel?
Yes, Laravel. Comment about it?
No, honestly, I haven't worked with. I did PHP like everyone does in campus for like a day, but honestly, from at least what I've had recently, I think PHP has gone through. I think the PHP we enjoyed making fun of was like way back. Yes. So they've learned, they've seen what other languages are doing in the industry, and I do believe now, correct me if I'm wrong, is MVC, which is what most modern frameworks are using.
Yes.
For web development.
And to also add to that, now we have, back then, as I've said, tech evolves so fast.
Yeah.
Back then, I never had anybody incorporating object-oriented programming principles in PHP.
Yeah, but I think it was functional.
Yes.
Back then it was functional.
Yes. Now I think there are frameworks that have restructured it so that it follows the OP, all that.
Yeah.
And something I say a lot is most of these programming languages, for as long as you understand code usability principles, the OP, the abstraction, all those principles, for as long as they conform to it, or you have a framework that conforms to this, you can easily move from one language to another. That's a whole topic I think we'll have about interviews.
Yeah.
Because I think interviews are becoming, sometimes you got weird because somebody will ask you something that is so specific that it beats logic to know. Like, if you're a builder building a house, I shouldn't ask you, do you know how to lay grey tiles?
Grey tiles, like
it's
so
tiles.
Where if you say I know how to lay blue tiles, you're like, no, we're not looking for blue tiles, guys. We need grey. If you haven't worked with grey for 5 years, I'm sorry, it's next candidate. Yeah.
So it beats logic. You know how to lay tiles. Moving on to the theme of this episode, which is Ruby and JS. I stress "and" because at the beginning the statement was Ruby versus, but there is no competition between languages. But with that, I have to say JavaScript runs the web.
I have to agree. I hate it, but unfortunately, it's true.
It's true. So for now. And it will be a really long now. Let's look at these two languages that we can incorporate. So there's no verses. Right now we have microservices and decoupling to a level where you can use all these languages together. There's no competition between these languages. What works best is what you use. The only reason we would have maybe gone with verses is to be a bit populist and get this video going. Because,
clickbait title.
Yes, a clickbait title.
And this is like a mantra from the creator, a Japanese guy called Mats, from back in the 90s. That's when Ruby came up. His goal was to improve developer productivity and joy while programming. And so that's, I guess, something that I felt when I started working with Ruby, and it's been, I think, over 6-7 years working professionally now with it, making web apps primarily with Ruby on Rails, which is the primary framework in Ruby. So you can picture Ruby on Rails is what Laravel is to Ruby and PHP. Yeah. And since then, honestly, it's been great. But yeah, as you've mentioned, I've worked with React as well. So it is a love for Ruby, but I am fortunate enough where I can spend time looking at other languages and frameworks as well.
Quick question. How is the learning curve?
That's actually an interesting question, and it comes from two factors. So the first one will be your level of experience. So I think at a certain level of experience you have as a developer, moving between languages, the hurdle just changes. It's more of understanding the syntax and the nuances of that language. And then the second one is, assuming you're not that experienced, what was your first language? So where are you coming from? So if you're coming from Python, then swapping to Ruby instant should be really, really similar. But now, and the reason for that is Ruby is dynamically typed. So we don't have types. You don't do like int I is equals to 1. You just say I is equals to 1. Yeah. And Ruby will just assume this looks like an integer, so I'm assuming this is an integer. And you can now set I to make an object, and it won't mind. But so now you see, if you're coming from like Java and C and C++, as you're saying, which is statically, then now you might find it a bit odd. Then how does everything work here? So that's generally how the experience should be. The learning curve, if you're open-minded, then on either side it should be fine.
I can attest to that, because I made the transition from the static typing in C++ to JavaScript.
Yeah.
So coming from that background, as you've said, of static typing, and then I came to JS. And the reason I came to JS was the evolution of basically the prevailing architecture of the time. By then it was, you have your computer, you install everything on it, your database is on it, everything is there, nothing goes online.
Yeah.
So over the years we have seen everything is going online. As this transition came where everything is on the web, I naturally found myself going towards JavaScript. And again, I fought off the urge to work with TypeScript for a while, but it brought me back again to static typing. It is easier to maintain code that is written in TypeScript because you have defined how the structure, the IntelliSense picks up everything. You have autocompletes because they know exactly what to expect. This function expect this. So,
quick one before we maybe move to the next topic is, so you mentioned now TypeScript is statically typed. So assume you do not have like the VS Code with the IntelliSense, where it will be able to pick up excuse you just about to mess up with this type. Does it mean when you run it on the browser, you get a runtime error?
If you have TypeScript code, you first compile it to JavaScript and then run now the JavaScript code.
Yes, makes sense.
So looking at the file with the class itself, which in this case in JS it is custom_date.js. You can see that the constructor class, what it does is basically it initializes this date with the new date function, which creates a new object with the current date right now. Then from there we have the three functions: the greetings function that takes username parameter, the getTime in EAT function that takes no parameter, and then the getEpochTime function which takes no parameter. We have a variable that stores this date object that is accessed by these three functions. So the date object after initialization is accessed by greetings, and what we are doing here is basically extracting the hours from this date object. What getTime in EAT does, it localizes to the East African time zone, the specific time. So from there you can see the options. The options basically define how you want that date time to look. Then finally we have the getEpochTime, which is used to return the epoch depending on the time that it has gotten. So from there it just runs the getTime function within the date object and returns that.
And so this should now return like the millisecond figure.
Yes,
Like
it should return the millisecond. You can also return the seconds by dividing by 1,000 and then you get the seconds. Yes, and with that you have the class. Then in the main, I won't go too much into it. What you're just doing is instantiating that class, and then from there you log the greetings, you log the localized time in EAT, and then East African time, that is, and then you are also returning the epoch. So to run that code, you just use the node package, make sure it's installed. The instructions are
the README, I believe.
Are on the README, yes. And you can run, see how the code runs, and then you can take us through just so that you can look at the similarities now with the Ruby.
Yeah. Thanks, Goweki. Yeah, so on the same repo on episode 1, we should have under the JS folder, we have the Ruby folder. And similar to the JS side, we still have two files. And the goal is to implement the same functionality, so I won't go into too much depth. The core logic is in the datehelper.rb file. And when you look at it, you'll notice we have a module. So where modules come in Ruby is to essentially get a cleaner code. And how that is implemented is that you'd use a module to write common methods that you think you would end up using in different classes. And then in each of the classes, you can include the logic. And in a few, we'll see how that is now implemented in this instance. So you'll see our module has the similar three methods. So we have the greeting, the getTime in EAT, and getEpochTime. I think code should be relatively similar. Just two quick comments is you'll notice one small difference we have between Ruby and JS is that Ruby has an implicit return in the method. Yes. So what that means is you find we rarely don't write return something, return a certain statement, because the last line of a method will be automatically returned in Ruby. And then something interesting is we, on the JS side, we were able to create the options object that defined the time zone and the format of the date string you would like when you are localizing it. On this side, we're using a library called tzinfo to set up the time zone, the EAT time zone, and then we are using a string formatter to kind of let's say hard code the format, the exact format we'd like, which is the day, month, and year to match the Great Britain format that we had on the JS side as well. And getEpochTime, just doing a time, which is the time object, dot 2i, gives you back the millisecond integer that you'd like. And then going back, now we just have the main RB file, which now defines the class called main, similar to what we had on the JS side. And now you'll notice here is where we say include date helper. So now the interesting thing comes in is that at the bottom where we're printing out the result, we're able to do main.greetings, which is calling a method on the main class. However, greetings is not defined on main, but it is included when we say include the helper module methods. This means we could create another class, let's say called user, include the helper, and now we have the functionality user.greetings, essentially avoiding repeating the code. Yeah, I think that's a high-level description. Similar to what we mentioned on the README, we also have a breakdown on how you would run the Ruby code.
All right. I've also seen you have used a different naming conventions for your functions. The underscore, I think that's a thing of preferences.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a convention based on the language you are. So you find in JS, I believe you're doing the camel case. So in Ruby, we purely do the underscore.
So it's not a preference?
No, it's not. It's more of a convention. I would not, if I pushed code to like a professional repo, I'd get a review and tell me, please switch to underscore. Yeah.
That's something you have learned. Apart from that, I think everything else, just looking through it follows the convention of most modern programming languages. I think, of course, if it was C++, it would be more lines of code, probably.
Definitely more lines, even more than the JS, more than the Ruby.
Yes.
Definitely for both. I think an interesting thing you find as well is when doing like lead code. So this is like the code challenges. You find people end up preferring using JS and Python because they're less verbose. Because picture in an interview, high-level stakes, you don't want to spend your time typing so many words, and you have a 45-minute slot to come up from from problem to perfect solution. So that's why you end up leaning against languages like C++ and Java.
Yes, so me myself being a fan of C++ in some scenarios, yes, that is very true. I always go for JS for tasks. If I'm given a task to do, it might be a test, it might be some mentorship sessions I need to show how languages work and all that. I always go for JavaScript, yes. I think my takeaway from here is there's no verses in development. I might use it, so out there when I use verses, just know I'm being populist. I'm looking for clicks because bills must be paid. But there's no verses. All these things work in an ecosystem. Choose the best. Don't confine yourself into one language that much. At least two. Pick two. I think we can say kwa jirani kuna waka moto. We have heard the stories about Flutter. So at least take two languages, be acquainted with them, know the guiding principles for modern languages, because it's quite easy to move from one language to the next if you know the principles, what functions are, what methods are, what classes are, how to write reusable code, and the rest of the OOP principles. And then from there you can build something you picked.
Yeah, I think, Goweki, that's, I guess, a perfect summary. I don't think there's much to add. Maybe one thing that turns out, just to add on what you said, is on the topic of Ruby and JavaScript, we come to realize it's important to learn which tool to pick for the right job.
Yes.
And I guess something that I ended up noticing while working on the test repo that we just did was, you noticed on working with the time zone on the JS side, you are able to define the options, give it to the to local string function, and it works seamlessly. I ended up struggling on the Ruby side because Ruby is not really built for the web. So functionality such as time zone is not a first-class citizen. And what that means technically is I had to import a library to implement the time zone functionality. And so you find, I think, as we started on the episode, is JavaScript is the language that runs the web. And so it's important to realize when you find yourself in a place where you need, for example, time zone, then it's probably smarter and the better choice to handle it on the client side with JavaScript, and maybe let Ruby handle the logic of maybe storing the user date values on the DB side as a backend. And lastly, I think, as you were mentioning, the importance of learning more than one language is, I think, something I find interesting is looking through the developer report that Stack Overflow releases every year that shows the trends in the market, which languages are growing, which ones are slowing down, and it helps you understand, because especially if you're not treating development as a hobby, then that's fine. But once it's your career and your profession, then it's important to understand what the market is focusing on and what's kind of lacking behind. Yeah.
For the next episode, we look at EdTech, basically implementation of technology within the educational field, for trainers, for educationists, for learners. How does technology facilitate? We will also see a few products that exist. We'll have a learning experience designer who has worked within the field of education, also been a corporate trainer. They have also taught tech. I won't give you their name right now, but you'll see in the posters. If you have, yes. So if you have any questions regarding education technology, how it's implemented, if you also have questions regarding today's episode, feel free to put it out in the comments. Also, like and subscribe. It goes a long way to put our content out there. We want to demystify tech, especially locally. Have candid conversations, not populist conversations. Candid conversation on what tech is, where it is headed, what is happening within the field. And with that, I think we can come to a close.
Till next time, keep it full stack.